This is Weirdly Enough, your regular podcast for strange stories and amazing facts, delivered straight to your favorite podcast directory and at weirdlyenough.com. Now, here are your hosts, Andy and Len.
Yes, back again, and both of us wearing masks, because that's the new rule, isn't it? No, we're not actually, but we're keeping the distance, and if we do go into a shop, we're going to put masks on, because that's the thing now, isn't it? We're just talking about masks.
Well, it's funny, you know...
Sit back a wee bit, just.
When it comes to masks,
yeah,
I don't think a mask is enough.
Yeah.
Well, so, yeah, I went online there.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't worn that much yet, but I was online there, and I thought, you know...
He's not wearing that much.
I'm not feeling safe.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, in order to feel safe, go for the full campsite.
Okay, right, with the zip. Yeah.
With the zip, yeah, it's about pricey, like it's $300, but you know it's worth it to
what
feel safe,
prices, you know. And it keeps others safe as well.
It's a responsible thing to do.
So when you're in public transport, you know, you're there on the campsite, everybody's feeling.
So we'll have to start doing that, but from Pulp Fiction, you know, bring out the camp. The camp sleeping.
I just love going into shops, and I always forget and have to go back and get a mask and put it on. But the thing is, like a few months ago, well, before this whole thing happened, if you'd walked into a shop in a mask, they would have thought you were robbing the place. Now they tell you have to have this mask on.
It is quite bizarre.
Yeah. I wonder how many crimes have been committed under the guise of COVID masks.
Well, you see, this is the thing, because I kind of cut side of myself the other day wearing a mask, and was wearing shades at the time because it was a sunny day, and I thought, I look like, if you ever see the video for Bank Robber by the Clash,
right.
If you ever see the punters and that, because I was wearing like one of these washable masks. It's like a big heavy, but it's not one of the trendy ones. Yeah, it's like a big kind of like repurposed kind of cloth one, right? But it looks like an old school kind of bank robber. Yeah, you know, kind of like wrapping a rag around your face, kind of thing. Yeah,
I've got one of the black ones.
Do they have like little vents and stuff in them?
I don't know. No,
some of them do. Some of them are like uber expensive. Like, yeah.
No, I don't think this one was. Yeah, masks. But anyway, let's crack on with the podcast today. We're going to be looking at mystery airships. But before we get on to that, there have been some comments on YouTube, because we podcast this. It's all out in the podcast networks, but we're also on YouTube. So if you like listening to your stuff there, which some people do, go there. We don't do anything visual, it's just a picture of us, but you get your audio there through YouTube. But apparently, do you remember we were talking in the Mandela effect, and one of the things you were talking about was the bone behind the eye, and you said there isn't a bone behind the eye. Well, somebody's come on YouTube and said there is. Yeah.
See, I was getting confused because, you know, I'm not an anatomist, but it was just one of those little kind of things that were pointed out about the Mandela effect. To be honest, the Mandela effect, it's so big. Yeah, you could probably do a whole season about the Mandela effect. It's that massive.
YouTube user Requiem pointed this out to us. He or she says that they do believe in the Mandela effect, but in this case, this was just a case of stupid. So there you are.
Were we being stupid?
I think so, yes, by not knowing about... I wouldn't care about a bone behind the eye.
Requiem can jog on.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, it's been hot the past week. I'm getting very agitated.
You are, yes. You're going to start one of those YouTube comment wars.
I was kind of thinking, you know, it's probably early days at the moment, but you say going forward, we could maybe kind of have some internet beef with people.
Yeah, I think so.
And create a bit of drama.
Remember your... distance.
Oh right, yeah.
No, you're too close.
Oh right.
Yeah, that's better.
It's like the opposite to COVID culture.
Yes.
Where you're always supposed to be.
Well, no, this is the same as COVID culture. You have to stay away from the microphone.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Away, got that.
You hear about that party somewhere during the whole lockdown thing? These people had a party.
Sure, everybody's having parties.
They passed around a microphone. They were doing karaoke, and that's how they all got
yeah, it. This because like. I've probably told that story loads because I read it in the Sunday World, to be honest. But apparently the story was, I know we're rambling, but it's spontaneous. Yeah. Apparently it was a civil servant, an unnamed civil servant, and she was working in London. Right. And she caught a touch of the COVIDs. Yes. When she was in London. Okay. But on one of her weekends back at home in Limavady, she decided to throw a karaoke party, as you do.
Oh, I thought this was across the water, as we say over here.
Well, no, that's the one I heard. This was Limavady. Okay, so she had like a karaoke party, and half of Limavady turned up and got
got the COVIDs
because they're all like spitting on each other and sharing mics and all the rest of it. She basically infected the whole town.
Sharing,
So then the valley was in lockdown, but it wasn't really in lockdown. It was just like a couple of shops shut.
Yeah,
and opened again about 2 days later.
Right,
so
okay.
Anyway,
let's crack on. Mystery Airships.
Yeah, Mystery Airships is obviously one of the things we look at in the podcast is UFOs. It's kind of part of our remit.
Yeah.
But this is a bit different. In the late 19th century in America, there was a wave.
Is this kind of historic UFOs? So back, before we were talking about planes and stuff.
Yeah,
aircraft.
Normally people talk about UFOs as, your man Kenneth Arnold in 47.
Yeah.
He was the guy that sort of coined the phrase flying saucers.
Right, okay.
Because he was flying about in this plane and he saw
flying saucers.
Yeah. Mind you, before that in World War II there was the infamous Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Which your man Dave Grohl named his band after. But
wasn't the band of Nirvana coming over actually?
Yeah.
There you are.
But in the 1890s, there was mysterious airships that turned up in California.
Right.
And this was in 1896. Now, I'll sort of not do a sort of dry chronological kind of thing. I'll just give a few little vignettes that are quite interesting. The Sacramento Bee reported the first sighting on this is very Americanized, 18th of November.
And the Sacramento Bee, I assume, is a local rag.
A local rag, I would assume, in California. Witnesses reported a light moving slowly over Sacramento on the evening of the 17th of November at 1,000 feet in the air. A witness named R.L. Lowry reported that he heard a voice from the craft issuing commands to increase elevation in order to avoid hitting a church steeple.
So somebody on board the craft was issuing these commands.
Yeah, but
in English.
It gets quite interesting when you get into it. It's very strange. Colonel H.G. Shaw was driving his buggy through the countryside in Southern California in November 19th, 1896, and he came across what appeared to be a landed spacecraft. He described it as having a metallic surface which was completely featureless, apart from a rudder and pointed ends. He estimated a diameter of 25 feet and said the vessel was around 150 feet in total length. 3 slender 7-foot tall extra-terrestrials were said to approach from the craft whilst emitting a strange warbling noise. The beings reportedly examined Shaw's buggy and then tried to physically force him to accompany them back to the airship. The aliens were said to give up after realising they lacked the physical strength to force Shaw aboard.
Well, they're 7 foot and all 3 of them couldn't handle.
Well, he was obviously a military man.
All right, yeah.
So you know what I mean.
Say, on you go, chaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They supposedly fled back to their ship, which lifted off the ground and sped out of sight. Colonel Shaw believed that the beings were Martians sent to kidnap an Earthling for unknowable but potentially nefarious purposes.
I would say very much nefarious.
And they say that's one of the earliest recorded examples of attempted alien abduction.
So this was
1996, November 1896.
November 96.
And there's loads and loads and loads of these. We'll run through a few. One witness from Arkansas, allegedly a former state senator called Harris, was supposedly told by an airship pilot that the craft was bound for Cuba to use its Hotchkiss gun, which was like an early type of machine gun, to kill Spaniards.
Oh dear.
So they were off to kill I think it was something to do with the Spanish-American Wars. They were off to Cuba.
We can't be having that.
Yeah. In one account from Texas, 3 men reported an encounter with an airship and with 5 peculiarly dressed men who said that they were descendants of the lost tribes of Israel.
Right.
And learned English from the 1553 North Pole expedition led by Hugh Willoughby.
Okay, so they'd been living in the North Pole all this time.
Yeah, that was like one of the lost tribes of Israel.
Yeah.
Matt Hugh Willoughby learned English off him.
So
then obviously created airships and that.
Could some of these airships have been early like military craft rather than extraterrestrial?
It's funny you should say that because we'll get on that. Some of the stories they're quite lurid. An article in the Albion Weekly News said that 2 witnesses saw an airship crash just inches from where they were standing. The airship suddenly disappeared with a man standing where the vessel had been. The airship pilot showed the man a small device that supposedly enabled him to shrink the airship small enough to store the vessel in his pocket. On April,
It's handy.
It's handy, yeah. On April 10th, 18 1897, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch published a story reporting that one W.H. Hopkins encountered a grounded airship about 20 feet in length and 8 feet in diameter near the outskirts of Springfield, Missouri.
Okay.
The vehicle was apparently propelled by 3 large propellers and crewed by a nude woman and a bearded man.
I went to Taco Bell once in Springfield, Missouri.
He was also nude, apparently.
Not impressed. The nude man. Was the woman nude too?
They were both nude.
Do you think they were caught unawares? Do you think they were meant to have clothes on and they were just out in their airship? And
maybe
thought,
they were nude. Maybe they were nudists.
It's a wee bit warm. Let's engage in our second hobby of nudism. Yeah.
Hopkins attempted with some difficulty to communicate with the crew in order to ascertain their origins. Eventually they understood what Hopkins was asking of them, and they both pointed to the sky and uttered something that sounded like the word Mars.
Of course it did.
On April 16th, 1897, a story published by the Table Rock Argus claimed that a group of anonymous but reliable witnesses had seen an airship sailing overhead. The craft had many passengers.
Wait a minute, how can they be reliable if they're anonymous?
Well, hang on, the Table Rock Argus said they're reliable.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
do you know what I mean? And if they're like a colonel or whatever, they're probably bona fide,
Okay.
The witnesses claimed that amongst these passengers was a woman tied to a chair, a woman attending her, and a man with a pistol guarding their apparent prisoner.
Yeah.
Before the witness thought to contact the authorities, the airship was already gone. I suppose you couldn't just ring 911 or whatever in those days,
I wonder how long it was before he thought, I better contact the authorities here.
Yeah.
What authorities would you send a telegram pigeon?
I suppose the local, the old bill, I would imagine.
Constabulary.
Explain there's nefarious activities going on.
Yes.
Now there is a theory. You were talking about military experiments and whatnot. In 2009, American author J. Allen Danilek wrote a book called The Great Airship of 1897.
Right.
He made the case that the Mystery Airship was the work of an unknown individual, possibly funded by a wealthy investor from San Francisco. And it was basically to build a prototype airship with a view to starting a passenger service at some point in the future. The ship, he proposes, was built in secret to safeguard its design from patent infringement, as well as to protect investors in case of failure. Noting that the flights were initially seen over California and then only later the Midwest, as in St. Louis, he speculates that the inventor was making a series of short test flights, moving from west to east and following the main railway lines for logistical support. And it was these experimental flights that formed the basis for many of the newspaper accounts from the era. Now, everything stopped in mid-April 1897. There was no other accounts after 1897. So yeah, it's very, very strange. So Washington, a lot of people took the idea that it probably was an extraterrestrial thing. The Washington Times speculated the airships were a reconnoitering party from Mars, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch also thought it was a Martian. In 1909, a letter printed in the Otago Daily Times of New Zealand said that the mystery airship sightings then being reported in New Zealand, so there was a little wave in 1909 in New Zealand, was due to Martian atomic-powered spaceships. So it's all very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
did they look like airships as you would know them, like a Zeppelin or something like that?
Yeah.
Or were they just called airships and they could have been like flying saucers?
They basically look like airships. So I would go, to be honest, it's quite possible somebody was just experimenting with things at the time.
It's strange that throughout history, last 120 years of encounters or so-called encounters with UFOs and things like that, they have always fitted into the technology of that time.
Yes.
So you've had airships back then, and then in the 50s you have these kind of flying saucer things, almost like those caravans, those Airstream, I think they're called.
Yeah.
Those big silver caravans. They kind of look like that, and the ones today are sort of maybe more like fighter jets and more like experimental, very, very fast jets. So it seems that maybe there's a little bit of sort of creative license there in the people that see them, but not creative enough to hide their lie, if that's what it is.
One of the more interesting aspects of the whole phenomenon, there's a French guy called Jacques Vallée.
Right.
and he had a very controversial kind of theory about UFOs generally, and his theory is that we generate them out of our own minds.
Right.
They're like a kind of projection.
But they are physical.
Well, it's that idea that everything's energy.
Yeah.
You know, so we're kind of like, and we're kind of saying different kind of, it's always perceived in your own cultural terms. It's like back in the day, people would have perceived them as like leprechauns.
Yeah.
Or like fairies or angels or whatever.
Yes.
But now we're saying them as aliens. You know, it's whatever your kind of cultural.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing I'm trying to get to. You know, it's kind of cultural. The what people see in whatever time period. You know, but then that doesn't explain ancient aliens and things like that. You know, the carvings and drawings from way back when.
Well, I suppose it doesn't explain. It's like, what are the aliens? You know, are they from another dimension? Are they from another planet? Are they from the future? Yeah. Are they demonic? Yeah. You know, are we actually projecting these things ourselves? You know what I mean? There's definitely something going on.
Have we ever
what there is, I would keep a very open mind towards. You know.
Have we ever looked at ancient aliens on? Weirdly enough.
No, but we have to.
We will. We'll
maybe work on a future show. That might be good. So I think that's it.
That's it. Okay. We'll be back in a minute or two with a few snippets. Welcome back. Yes, you're tuned to the Weirdly Enough podcast. I'm Andy Kane and I'm joined with Len Johnson. So this one came through in the week. Donald Trump isn't one to shy away from changing laws to suit himself or indeed his wonderful hair. And this week the White House is proposing to change the rules to allow more water to flow through shower heads in the United States. This is like weird. This is a weird thing. I know this is just a law being changed and stuff, but I just thought this came up. And I thought, that is weird.
Do you know how I first came across that this week? Have you ever heard of Sarah Cooper?
No.
It's just, you know, I don't know, have you seen this whole new thing for young comedians?
Right.
Where they lip sync onto politicians on TikTok?
Yeah.
There's this girl, Maggie Foster. She was doing it, and she ended up on Good Morning Britain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she was like lip syncing, you know, like Boris Johnson and people like that, you know. And people doing interviews, but Sarah Cooper does the same thing. She calls herself the Trump Whisperer.
All right.
So it's actually quite cleverly done. But yeah, I came up because I was following her, you say, on Twitter.
Yeah.
And she was doing a bit about the whole shower head thing. That's how I came across. That's all that about. Like.
Well, it's a 1992 ruling meant that the flow was restricted to 2.5 gallons a minute. However, Trump lamented that you take a shower, the water doesn't come out. You want to wash your hands, the water doesn't come out. So what do? You just stand there longer, or you take a shower longer. Because my hair, I don't know about you, but it has to be perfect. Perfect, he said. Conservation groups are obviously not happy about any change, which would mean more water and energy is wasted. And another one I saw, this was quite good. I know you love this term, the new normal, don't you?
Oh, the new abnormal.
The new abnormal.
I was getting quite irritated about it because everybody was saying it's the new normal, and then I thought, well, instead of getting annoyed about it, subvert it by sort of saying new abnormal. New
abnormal. Okay,
so
well,
it's new abnormal.
Whatever floats your boat. It's brought a lot of challenges to churches. Of course, people haven't been able to congregate, so physical services are out of the question. Most members of the clergy, however, have adapted to use technology to present their church services. Another thing that's suffered is the sacrament of Holy Communion. Of course, passing bread and wine, or Ribena in some cases, around isn't allowed. But one Church of England vicar has come up with a novel way to give bread to parishioners while adhering to government protocols. Reverend Eileen Harrop from Durham has used her Chinese heritage to as inspiration on how to pass around the sacrament by using chopsticks to pass the bread.
Oh yes, I saw something about that.
Reverend Eileen said, I thought, why can't I use long pairs of chopsticks, real bread rather than wafers, and drop it into the communicant's hands?
I saw an Episcopalian church in America.
That's easy for you to say.
Try saying that after a few Stellas. Episcopalian. He was using like a water pistol,
right,
and like a baptism,
right,
or a christening. He was like, to the wind.
Fair enough.
To maintain social distance, and I was going.
Well, they're all getting through it, you know.
Yes, we all have to do it to get through it, or get through it to do it, or
whatever.
Do it to get through it. I don't know.
Hope you all stay fit and healthy, and come back to us next week. Remember, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I think we're on Amazon. They're starting a podcast service, and we're going to be on that, which is really exciting because you can ask your Alexa to play Weirdly Enough podcast. We're on Spotify, all the other ones as well. Follow us on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Send us a message. Even you can email us podcast@weirdlyenough.com, and we will get back to you, or comment. We're also on YouTube. Comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all those things. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Weirdly Enough. Remember to subscribe to get the latest edition as soon as it drops. And don't forget to leave a review. Email us about anything we've discussed or with your own weird tale at podcast@weirdlyenough.com.